and welcome back to our next edition of the CBB Review Studio podcast. I am Dan Siegel, joined as usual by my co-host Mat Mlodzinski, here with another edition of CBB Rank, counting down the days until the start of the college basketball season. One team at a time, ranked 100 through 1 on our site. Be sure to subscribe to our channel if you want more content like this, and be sure to check out our website with all these article team profiles. The link is in the episode description. Let's get started today. We got 50 through 46, starting with number 50, NC State, and that Cinderella run came out of nowhere, right? Last year, made it to the Final Four. That's been pretty well documented. But really, what I wanted to talk about was how do we project a program like this going into a new season? Because on one hand, we have 7 years of a body of work by Kevin Keatts that essentially led to him getting fired, or it was a very poorly kept secret that he would have been fired had they not miraculously won the ACC tournament and then 4 games in the NCAA. On the other hand, they did just go to the Final Four, right? So is it going to be a team that's just it goes back to what they've been for the last 7 years and the Final Four was a complete fluke? Or is this something that they could build off of, and now all of a sudden, because of that run, they have momentum, they're a better program?
You'd like to think they could build off of it, but when you lose DJ squared in DJ Horn and DJ Burns, those were like the main players for last year's NC State team. So Kevin Keatts is going to have to do this with a whole new group of guys. Again, bit of a miracle run. When you get in the NCAA tournament, matchups become a big thing because you're not playing a conference schedule where teams are seeing you every year, twice a year, sometimes 3 times a year. So all of a sudden, teams aren't used to this NC State team, their style of play. And I think having a guy like DJ Burns helped them in that run. I will say this, Dan. Kevin Keatts in his first 3 years at NC State won 20-plus games. Yeah. So he kind of started off halfway decent, and then it just went crashing down. And the last 2 years have been better. Well, obviously, last year was the peak of that. So maybe there is momentum. I'm concerned, though, very concerned when I look at this potential starting lineup. And I would like to admit, I think that Marcus Hill will be starting in this lineup when it's all said and done. The Bowling Green transfer. Again, talk a lot about how mid-majors might be able to adapt. I will say that the MAC is a little bit more of a competitive basketball conference than most mid-major conferences. So if you're averaging close to 20 a game in the MAC, I'm assuming you'll be able to carry it over to the ACC. You see Mark Sears. He did that at Ohio, comes over to Alabama, one of the best players in the country. Not saying Marcus Hill is going to have the same path, but I think he's a player to watch out for, and I think NC State is going to need him to do well.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I do like some of the core that returns. Like, I like Ben Middlebrooks. He should start at center. I think Michael O'Connell getting a bigger opportunity at point guard, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Mike James, Jaden Taylor, like, they're good, and they're back. And, like, Brendan Huntley-Hatfield. Huntley-Hatfield was pretty efficient on that Louisville team that was really bad. But he's, like we talk about, you know, the concept of every single team, even the worst team in the country, everybody has to have a leading scorer, right? That's just how it works. Somebody leads the team in points, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're a great player. Maybe that's the case with Huntley-Hatfield, but I don't think he's asked necessarily to be that guy at NC State. Then again, who else would be? Maybe it's more of just like a, you know, they don't have anybody averaging more than 15 points per game, but it's like they have a bunch of guys in like the 8 to 12 range. I'm not sure. Also, another guy I want to mention, Dontrez Styles from Georgetown. I think he has a ton of upside. So they have pieces. It's nothing like spectacular, but we'll see if he can get it all together. I think 50 is a fair ranking for them.
I think it is. I think that you have to kind of throw out of the window when a team that through 25, 30 games of the season was a borderline NCAA tournament team all of a sudden makes a crazy run. You kind of have to weigh that, right? All right, we had 30 games and they weren't really proving this. Sure, they went on a run, so maybe they were better than we thought they were, but are they realistically a top 10 team coming into the season because of that? Even if they return DJ Burns and DJ Horn, I don't think they are, right? I think they would more be like 15 to 20 range.
Yeah.
It's just me.
Yeah. All right, number 49, we've got Grand Canyon, who is our only true mid-major in our top 50. I say true mid-major, like there's West Coast Conference teams and Mountain West. But like of the true mid-majors, Grand Canyon out of the WAC is our highest ranked of those. And they're coming off of a year where they won 30 games. Speaking of the WCC, they upset St. Mary's in a 12-5 game in the first round in the NCAA tournament last year. And I think we talked about McNeese, even more so with Grand Canyon. They absolutely have the formula to be a dominant mid-major team. They have a great coach, first off, in Bryce Drew. And then they return the superstar in Tyon Grant Foster, who's got to be one of, I'd say, top 3 returning mid-major player in the country. Got to be. And just around him, like by far, they lead the WAC, which they ran through last year. They lead the conference in returning minutes with 57.8% of their minutes returning. It's going to be a really, really good Grand Canyon team. And I think they got a few non-con games too that they could kind of prove themselves. Nothing spectacular, but they're playing Western Kentucky, Arizona State, Stanford, Georgia, St. Louis. Those are solid teams. You kind of build up a little bit of a resume there. My concern though, Matt, they're easily the best team in the WAC. I've said all this, but the rest of the conference is not just like a pushover sub 200 and Ken Palm teams that you'll beat by 30 points every night. Like UT Arlington, Seattle, Utah Valley. Those are solid programs, solid teams projection wise that could kind of give Grand Canyon a slip up here and there and force them to not really have a chance of that at large.
Yeah, there's no real marquee games on the non-conference schedule where you're like, all right, if they pick up a win there, then this could seal the deal. If they end up like, again, a 30-win team from last season, right? Let's say Grand Canyon only wins 28 games, right? And they lose like 4 or 5 games in conference. I don't know if they have the non-conference to get there. Western Kentucky, Arizona State, Stanford, Georgia, St. Louis, right? Like that's okay, right? But you need a more of a marquee team. I don't even know if they're going to play a top 25 team this season.
No.
But when you look at the team, Dan, I mean, they got better, right? I mean, you lose Gabe McLaughlin and Javon Blackshear. You bring in Jacoby Coles, who put up double-digit points, shot 40% from 3 in the Big 12.
Yeah.
And then you bring in a guy like Mekhi Williams from UT Arlington that shot 45% from 3. I don't care what level of basketball you're playing. 45% from 3 is going to get it done. So I see another great GCU team. I like the makeup of this team. Tyon Grant Foster is a star. Rayshawn Harrison is a great second option to Grant Foster. There's a lot to love about this team, but the pressure's on. Like they pretty much can't lose more than 5 or 6 games.
Well, I mean, I think it's ultimately just going to 5 or 6 might even be too many at that. But I think it's ultimately going to come down to the conference tournament. And that's what stinks about teams like this, because they're going to be really fun, but there's not going to be many reasons to turn them on over other games until like conference tournament season. So we're big college basketball guys. We're going to follow them throughout the year, but I think many people are kind of going to put them in the rearview mirror for 4 or 5 months, which is unfortunate, but they'll definitely be back and relevant in everyone's mind when it matters in March. That I do believe that.
And I would urge people to make sure to at least watch one of these non-conference games, right? Whether it's Georgia, whether it's St. Louis, just one of these teams that we had in our CBB rank, so you know what Grand Canyon is like, so you can expect what to expect from them when it comes closer to March.
Yeah, just Tyon Grant Foster. He's electric, so
yeah.
That's enough said there. Number 48, we got Clemson. Clemson's kind of a similar story to NC State, right? Things were looking a little bit like, same old, same old. What are we doing here with Brad Brownell? It's the same story every year. They were better last year in the regular season. But my point is, it was the tournament run that they made that really is what salvaged the perception, the positive perception that we now have of the program. The biggest storyline, though, with Clemson is that PJ Hall is gone, and he was their best player for 3 years. He was phenomenal. Just basically they ran their offense through him. For what it's worth, they do get Ian Shefflin back. Not a guy you're running your offense through, but like he's just a dog in the front court. He could be a small 5 of 4 specifically. So that's definitely a good sign. And they also bring in this guy like Victor Lakin from Cincinnati. He has some really high potential on the offensive end. So we'll see if he could kind of step up into that mold. I kind of like James Zachary as well as a replacement for Joe Girard. I think they're very similar players, Girard and Zachary, both like, we're going to take care of the ball. We're going to shoot the ball well. Not like the most electric athletes, but just what you want out of a traditional point guard, they're going to give you. Just that 3-and-D identity, I think, is really what you're going to get out of Clemson this year. It doesn't scream much different than any other Clemson team we're used to, does it?
It really doesn't. And it's funny too. I do want to shout this out because not only are Keats and Brownell's ACC paths similar, they both coached at UNC Wilmington before they got these jobs. Brownell did have a stop at Wright State before, but kind of interesting there. I think Brownell, though, it's different because he's been at Clemson for so long that at this point, if he's leaving, it's just because it's somehow a better job opens up, which I'm not sure if it will because I think people already have the verdict on him. And I think if you're Clemson, you kind of are like, all right, like, what are we going to get that's better, right? We're a football school for sure, no debate. So what are we going to get that's better than Brownell? He's keeping us consistent. We've made the NCAA tournament. We're doing well. Ian Shefflin was my player to watch. I mean, this guy, he can be electric, right? You lose PJ Hall. Well, Shefflin might just come in and put up PJ Hall numbers. I'm not going to lie. He's not going to average 18 points a game. I don't want to say that. But the guy just plays out of this world. He doesn't take a play off, and that's what I love about Ian Shefflin. And there's a lot around him, right? Like, all around him. You look at Jake Heidbreder, too, who I have starting at small forward. He redshirted last year. He shot at 40% from three at Air Force. I mean, he was a key player for them. There's a lot on this Clemson team to like. It's a pretty deep team. I don't know, Dan. Like, I look at the ACC, and sure, you got your heavyweights, but there seem to be a lot of, like, higher-end middle-of-the-pack teams that are going to challenge and make this conference really good this season.
Do you think we say this every year about Clemson, and then we'll be like, oh, we were right because the first 10, 12 games, they look awesome, and then they kind of fall off a little bit as the season goes on. That's just the same story every year with Clemson. They're perennially solid. That's all I'm going to say.
Like, kind of, but, like, also, are you really expecting Clemson to go win 25, 30 games, right? Like, no. I feel like the expectation is low. So it's like, oh, if they win 22, 23, that's a good season.
Yeah. Because, like you said, they're a football school, and they'll take being above average in basketball any day of the week.
Oh, yeah.
Number 47, we got Wisconsin. Wisconsin, I guess similar storyline to what I just talked about. They had a really good start to the year. Kind of had some tough stretches down the line, and then a really tough first-round loss to James Madison that was not good. That was an upset that a lot of people liked, and it came into fruition. I think with Wisconsin, AJ Storr was the most electric player Wisconsin has had in, like, forever. He was everything they wanted. Anything they, like, could have expected out of him, he gave and more, and now he is gone. So it looks like it might just be back to what we're used to Wisconsin being. You're going to play good defense. They'll get it done on offense. I do like Steven Crowell at the center spot. I think he could really raise their ceiling, kind of a rim runner, 7-footer. So, again, I said same old Clemson. It looks like kind of a same old Wisconsin team. Now that AJ Storr is gone, they're not going to be as electric as they were last year.
100%. And I apologize for my allergies, too. Killing me right now in the fall. Wisconsin, I'm fed up with the Badgers, Dan.
Are you?
Really am. Because last season, you looked at what they brought back after a 20-win team with fairly young guys on the team and with AJ Storr, and I was confident, was sure that Wisconsin was going to be a contender in the Big Ten. And they really let me down.
They were, though, at some point. Like, they went 11-9, but I think they were, like, at one point, like, 9-2 or something. Like, they were better than Purdue at some point. They just fell off.
And that's the thing. I'm like, they should have. 22-14 was a disgrace for Wisconsin last year. I'll be honest. Like, I had so many high hopes for the Badgers, and that's why I'm not even willing to say anything about this team. I'll be honest. I just need to see it in action. I can't believe Greg Gard is there for 10 years. By the way, that seems ridiculously long. It just seems like that number is wrong. But that's just crazy to think about. Look, you got a freshman potentially starting at point guard. You've got your potential starting shooting guard that missed all of last season. That just raises a lot of eyebrows. what the heck is the backcourt going to look like at Wisconsin? Sure, forward, power forward, center, Stephen Crowell, he's as reliable as anyone. You know what he's going to bring. I'm looking at this team, and I don't want to put hot takes out there. I don't know if Wisconsin wins more than 7 games in the Big Ten this season. I'll be honest. I just feel that low about them and what Greg Gard has going in Madison.
Interesting. Xavier Amos is their team MVP. I think that's a really bad sign.
Yeah, I mean, Stephen Crowell could be. I'll be honest.
According to the article, Amos. But yeah, I agree. There's not a lot to love. I think their floor is always high just because their defensive program, and like when you have continuity in your coaching staff, it usually stays that way in programs like that. But I don't see this team making the tournament. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah, no, I'm a little bit surprised that we have them where we have them.
All right, number 46, we got Villanova. Things have been obviously really disappointing in the post Jay Wright era. And to be honest, Matt, it hasn't been a talent issue. The last 2 years, Villanova's been pretty talented. They've gone from really well coached, like potentially the best, maximize your talent coach in the country, to somebody who does quite the opposite, like kind of ruins a team full of talented players in Neptune. And I think this year's Villanova team honestly has less talent than we're used to seeing in the last couple of years. I will say Wooka Poplar from Miami, he was awesome. Like that's a great addition. Eric Dixon returning at the power forward spot, also huge. But I'm looking outside of that, and there's not much proven production there. All you got is Jameer Brickus, underrated at LaSalle, sure, but the Big East is a whole nother animal. Recruiting class was good, not great. Like, you got Matthew Hodge, Josiah Mosley in the top 100. Are you relying on those guys to be, big impact pieces? And then Enoch Bokai and Tyler Perkins from Fresno State and Penn, they're playing much bigger roles than I think you'd want to see. But I think the bottom line comes down to we haven't seen Kyle Neptune come close to really getting the most out of his talent. And now with less talent, it's hard to be excited about Villanova.
I'm not very optimistic. Part of me still just looks at Villanova as a team that should be a contender in the Big East just because they ran the conference for a decade pretty much. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I mean, they pretty much need Hodge and Mosley to step up because you really only have 2 guys that have played a year of college basketball before off the bench, Tyler Perkins and Nana Njoku. And Njoku played 11 games last season. So you really only got 1 guy, right, that has any sort of experience that you can really write home about from last season. So you're going to be calling on freshmen to step up. You're calling on a lot of mid-major guys, right? Other than Wooga Poplar, I mean, Jameer Brickus, I'll call LaSalle. I mean, that should be fine, right? If I'm going to say that a guy in the MAC can step up in the ACC, I got to keep things straightforward and say that the guy in the A10 will be fine in the Big East. But, Tyler Perkins, of course, coming from the Ivy League. I don't know. I really don't know. Like with Wisconsin, I'm sure that the Badgers are not going to be that great. I'm going to be honest right now, and Wisconsin fans are probably, if they're watching this, they're not going to be happy with me after this episode. Villanova fans probably won't be either because I just don't really think the Wildcats have what's needed to compete in the Big East. I mean, it's a tough conference.
And do you think that's it for Neptune? If they have the season you're expecting them to have, think they move on already?
I think if they can go 10-10 to 12-8 in the Big East, that's fine because it's tough to go better in the Big East, but they can't have the non-conference they had last year. They've got to beat teams like Penn, St. Joe's, and St. Joe's is going to be a good team.
They were like what, the worst team according to like head-to-head record in that Big 5 area. Wasn't that true? Like they lost to a bunch of those teams. And they did. And I'll put 21 wins as a benchmark. I think 21 wins is what they need coming in after the Big East tournament, right? Not even counting if they make the NCAA tournament. All right. Anything else on Villanova?
I think that's it, but it's a wait and see approach. We're inside the top 50. It doesn't feel like it. We still haven't really hit.
No. I mean, that's true. That's true. Well, we'll have some teams. I mean, I'm not going to mention specifics, but we'll have some teams on the next episode. I do like, and I am intrigued by. Obviously, this is a committee rankings, so this is not exactly how me and Matt would rank these teams in order, but it's a good solid way to preview the season. So I like doing it this way. But once again, everyone, we'll be back with 5 more teams leading up all the way to the start of the regular season with Team 1. Thanks everyone for watching and listening, and take care.